close of the liturgical calendar year, which ends toward the end of November, we're just getting through the Gospel of Mark, and we're really right at what scholars would say is that hinge time. And there's going to be this change of pace, so to speak. And if you read the Gospel of Mark, it's only 16 chapters. If you read a chapter a day, it'd take you about 2 weeks. But if you read through it, what you'd realize is that Jesus is on this journey. And it's not just a spiritual journey, but in Mark's Gospel, it's also a geographical journey. He starts out in Galilee, in Capernaum, and he starts out on one side of the Sea of Galilee. He goes to the other. He keeps coming back and forth, which is kind of symbolic of he's preaching to the Jewish people, and then he goes over and he preaches to the Gentiles, and he comes back. And now he's moving toward Jerusalem, which is, of course, where he's going to suffer and die. And so it's kind of a journey up a mountain, up toward Jerusalem. And where he is right now is at that hinge moment where he's just getting ready to enter into Jerusalem. And before he does that, he gives a prediction, his third prediction of his passion. So right before our gospel passage today, Jesus tells his followers that he's going to suffer and die when he gets to Jerusalem because he's decided to go there. And right after that, we hear today James and John, two of Jesus' closest friends, who are with him in all the important moments. Besides Peter, they are the two most important apostles, disciples of Jesus. And what do? Right after Jesus tells them he's going to suffer and die, they come up to him and say, when you enter into your glory, can we have seats right next to you, the seats of honor? And what they're thinking is that this Messiah, Jesus, is going to go up to Jerusalem and he's going to overthrow the Romans and Herod and reestablish the kingdom of David because he's in the line of David, and so he will reestablish that kingdom. And Israel will find its new glory. The temple will reestablish itself as the place of sacrifice, and Israel will have its just glory. And when that happens, they want to be a part of it. They want to join in on that. And Jesus asks them that important question, can you drink this cup? And what Jesus is telling them isn't that they will drink this chalice of celebration, but that they must enter into him completely. They have to drink that cup fully. Not just the cup of majesty and glory, the cup of blessing, but also that cup of sorrow, that struggle that life is, and the struggle that Jesus will enter into when he goes to Jerusalem. And of course, they say yes because they still haven't figured it out. You know, in Mark's gospel, the apostles really don't look very good up to this point. They failed to understand Jesus in every possible way along their journey. They've seen all that Jesus has done, and yet they still haven't figured out that he's not the Messiah they want him to be, that he's going to be something different, something even more extraordinary. But they still haven't figured it out. And James and John, they're thinking in this world, and Jesus is trying to slowly get them to see things in his way. So James and John are off there in their world, thinking their ways, and Jesus is trying to move everybody toward him. And what happens next? The other apostles hear about it, and they're upset. And they're probably upset because they didn't think of it first. They want that seat. Everybody wants to be the important person next to the most important person. And so Jesus pulls them aside, and he teaches them something very important that they need to know, and that Jesus is not going to be that Messiah, and he completely rejects that idea of being that king. And how does he do that? He says, you know, you can't be leaders like the leaders of today. The leaders of today, they all want that important seat, and they all expect everyone to give them things and do things for them, and it's all about their personal glory, wealth, and prosperity. And Jesus says to his disciples and to us that you can't be that way. That to be a disciple of Jesus, to be a leader in his community, is to give of yourself, to give yourself away to others, to serve others, and thus in serving others, come closer to God and be a true leader. You know, one of the popes, and I can't remember which one it was, but a long, long time ago, he described his job as being the servant of the servants of God. In other words, he is at the service of all those who serve God, the lowest of the lowest servants. Not someone to aspire to the highest seat and highest power, but someone who should care for the lowly and care for those who serve God. And I think Francis is a perfect example of that type of service that he wants us to see and to partake in. And so when Jesus says that, the apostles are kind of coming to understand what Jesus really means by being his follower. And what he says at the end when he says, I have come not to be served, but to serve and ransom my life for the many. If there was one line in the Gospel of Mark, in any of the Gospels, that's the most important line of all of them. And it's the hinge that will change everything. From here on out in Mark's Gospel, everything will become more clear to the disciples. Everything will become obvious to them as they're going along. It still won't be easy, and they'll still run away at the end, but they'll understand a little bit better, and faith will be a little stronger because they'll understand what service and being a part of Jesus' kingdom is about. It's not about having things in this world and having people wait on you and take care of you. As wonderful as that is, it's about serving and being the person that gets off their feet and takes care of others around them, and that sacrifices of their own time and effort to take care of others around us. And if we want to be followers of Jesus, that's what he's asking us to do, to serve. In whatever way we can, the gifts and talents that we have, he wants us to share those, not to hoard them or to make them for our own benefit, but to give them away. And what you realize, what the world doesn't teach us, because the world says you got to have everything for yourself, you got to keep it, and it'll make you happy, and this will make you happy. But in reality, if you can give a little bit of yourself away, you'll discover that that's more joy in that than having all the possessions you could ever want. And that's the message of love. Everyone who's ever been in love realizes that the one thing love requires, the one thing it demands, is self-sacrifice. It requires us to give of ourselves. A husband and a wife give of themselves. They give to their children, and they teach their children to give of themselves so that the family can grow in love and in oneness. That's what love requires, that one thing. That if you've never given of yourself freely, have you ever really truly been in love with anyone? Or have you just loved yourself? And a lot of people run into that problem, I think, today, is that they fail to understand that love isn't about something you get. It's about something you give. If you love someone, your happiness is tied up in making them happy and joyful and loving and caring. And you grow from that, and your love grows from that, and it builds upon itself. And that's what Jesus is telling us, that in serving others, we will receive back more than we ever imagined. That's the mystery of our lives. The world tells us we have to accumulate things, that if I just have the next, latest, greatest smartphone, I'll be happier, have more joy. If I have a better TV or whatever it is, that somehow there's that joy in that. But ultimately, when you give just a little bit of yourself away, you'll find that joy and happiness is greater. And that's what serving the kingdom is about. Next week, we're going to hear about a healing. And what's interesting about that is that before this phrase that Jesus gives us, all of his healings take a little bit of time. He has to put mud in a blind man's eyes to make him see, and then he only sees dimly. Jesus has to do it a second time as if somehow it didn't quite work. And now he's going to heal people, and he's just going to say, your sins are forgiven and you are healed. And the blind man is going to see. And the difference is faith. Before, there wasn't enough faith for that healing to occur. And now that the disciples and the people around Jesus are getting it, there's going to be that ability to heal instantly because that faith is going to grow. And as Jesus moves toward Jerusalem, he's going to reconcile us to God. He's going to give us the Eucharist in the Last Supper that we're going to celebrate in just a few minutes. And he's going to give us that power to heal and to grow and to strengthen. So let's take the food that will nourish us here at the altar of the Lord to go out and serve each other. And in serving each other, realize that the more we give of ourselves, the more blessings that God will give us. When I was thinking of what to say today, and I thought of that, can he drink this cup? I thought of Indiana Jones. And I'm sure you've all seen the movie where they go in and they're going to pick the chalice of Christ, and the first person picks, and they pick the most beautiful chalice. It's got all kinds of diamonds and gold, and the line they use is, it's a chalice worthy of a king. And of course, he drinks from it, and he dies. And then Indiana Jones looks around, and he realizes that Jesus wouldn't have the cup of a king. He would have the cup of a common person, a carpenter, just a simple cup that he would drink and share with his friends. Because he didn't put his stock in the things of this world. He put his stock in giving himself away, ransoming for the many his life. And all he asks from us is to not put stock in the things of this world, but to place our faith in him by serving others.